I didn't think.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, I guess I'll go ahead and get started then. So I just started in my role in June, working with our digital projects and different partnerships that we have across campus. And so I kind of wanted to talk very briefly today about one of the projects that I inherited. And we are going to be migrating. So this is a project that started quite a few years ago with our Center for Greater Southwestern Studies. So this is in partnership with Dr. Sam Haynes, who is a history faculty member here. And he was basically looking at intersections of violence between different communities in Texas and kind of trying to visualize that. And so what he did is work with various people in the libraries to create a GIS map to show where these incidents were happening, and then being able to attach items to those different locations that gave the picture of who was telling the narrative and what the outcomes were and the people involved and different things like that. So this is kind of what the main page, the main website looks like when you come to the site. It is live now, and it in this current iteration, and is it's run through a Drupal website, and it's powered through Leaflet.js and Mapbox as a plugin. And so there are already a lot of data points that are in the site, and he is still currently, Dr. Haynes is still currently working with students to do research and get more data sets. So we're potentially going to be adding more content into this very soon. But I wanted to give a little overview about like what this partnership looked like and how you can create partnerships with faculty members to do this kind of work. And so, like I said, this started with a partnership between the Southwestern Studies Center. He found funding and has been funding this work for students and interns to do the research and create the metadata for us to put into the GIS map. And then the library side manages the site and does the upload metadata and updates and all the other maintenance type things that we need to do for the site. Like I mentioned, it is run through Leaflet.js and Mapbox, and I kind of wrote a couple pros and cons about this current system because currently everything is run through our web developer because he's the one that has the expertise in Drupal. And so it can be very customizable because you can kind of make it what you want. As a lot of open source things are. But the downside is that all of the work is now being done by our web developer, and he's also being pulled in a million directions because he's managing all the other websites. And then because of that, and because of the limited amount of time, the website itself isn't quite as dynamic as we would want it to be in terms of how to search the metadata and how you can interact with it and those kinds of things. So our future plans are that we are moving into Beepress for our institutional repository. We are potentially getting training on a sandbox mode on Friday. So we're hopefully going to start actually working in the system itself very soon. But Beepress also announced that they can work with embedded Google My Maps as part of their system, and can also embed third-party softwares, depending on which one it is. And so I'm hoping that once we get into this sandbox environment with Beepress, that we'll be able to start looking at all the capabilities it has with GIS, and other things like 3D rendering and models and other stuff like that. But yeah, so I think my intention today was really just to kind of let people know that this exists and that it's out there and people can use it. But also this is the very beginning of our migration stage. And so I'm very curious to see how this site develops and expands as we go through this migration, as we start utilizing the metadata better, figure out how to make it more operable, searchable, have people interact with it more. So I think there's gonna be a lot of really cool things coming out of this in the future. So that's all I had, but for this specifically, but it's just a very brief overview of what we have so far and kind of where we're hoping to go in the future with our new system. So thank you.
Can I just give you a shout out? I've already had students use this. They're mapping Indigenous Texas is the name of the class, and they're looking at narrative and trying to figure out if and maps and if it's right. And we use those data points because they're pretty well researched data points. So yes, these people were in this region at that time, and I love the year. Don't stop adding to it. Thank you. It's amazing.
That is fantastic, Whitney. Are there any other, Whitney, any other use cases? How is it used? I'm just curious, how's it used at UTA by other researchers or students?
Yeah, I mean, I would assume that Dr. Haynes is definitely using it in a lot of his, because he's still actively teaching as well. So I think that he's still using it pretty regularly in his classes. We have quite a bit of Texas history classes, especially the lower survey classes that use a lot of this. I didn't pull hits. Like that was one thing I should have looked at before I got on here was they do look at site views on Drupal. So that is something that I'll try and see if I can look it up in my system and see if we have site views for the site. But my understanding, especially with Leaflet / Mapbox, is that it's free up to a certain amount of views per month, and then it charges you for any views after that. And apparently there was a use case a couple years ago where a bunch of like hunters were using this website. And so we were getting a lot of hits at one point using this GIS map because they were trying to find, I'm not exactly sure how they were using it, but somehow or another they were using this site. And so we were getting a ton of views just over the course of like a 2-month period. And I want to say I had it written down somewhere. It was like maybe 25,000 views a month is when it's free. And then after that is when you start getting charged. So that's a potential drawback of this specific system that we're using, is that if for some reason this blows up and everyone all over the world is using this site, we could be hit with charges that we were not expecting. So but yeah, I'll think some more about what other like instances I've seen of people using this map specifically at least across the university.
What an interesting project. I could really see using that map and maybe even current events and comparing and contrasting, what was the violence then? What is the violence now at the borderland? So very cool.
Any other questions or comments? All right, then I am up next. So I'm going to share my screen again. I have way too many slides. So we'll see if we skip some or if I breeze through some. But what I am going to be presenting on here is not a project like I've done in the past. I'm going to talk about sources of worldwide non-US geospatial data. So what I'm thinking today is we're going to explore these 5 sources. We're going to look at natural earth, GeoFabric, OpenStreetMap shapefiles, which are phenomenal if you haven't been to that site, AData's GeoQuery, WorldClimb, and ArcGIS Business Analyst Online. But we need some sort of setting to make it interesting. So we are going to make believe global treasure hunt. We are uncovering the lost city of Desertica. So we are archaeologists on a thrilling expedition to discover the long lost city of Desertica, a mythical civilization rumored to have sunk beneath the desert centuries ago. And yes, that image there, I also created with that exact prompt with the "We Are Archaeologists," and that is the image that it generated. I thought it was perfect. So we need global geospatial data in order to to do this research. So we've got our first clue in. It's rumored to be in the largest country on the African continent. So we need some basic shape files of world countries. And this is our first source, Natural Earth or naturalearthdata.com. From this site, if you click on this downloads right here where that red circle is pointing to, that takes you right to a page similar to this. And right at the top of the page is the administrative boundaries for 258 countries in the world. That can easily be downloaded, brought into ArcGIS Pro, and sure enough, I have the names of the countries and then the area in square meters, which is why the numbers are so ginormous. But Algeria, sure enough, is the largest country in Africa. The next clue is that we need to locate a rectangular hospital with buildings in that country, in Algeria. This is the second site I want to point out. OpenStreetMap is a community-based collection of like a wiki for maps. Users are contributing, modifying, and updating, but the data is not available in an easy-to-use file format for GIS users, whether it's QGIS or ArcGIS. This German company, GeoFabric, download.geofabric.de, what they have regular daily extracts from OpenStreetMap's dataset into shape files, which is perfect for GIS researchers. So at the main page here, if you were to click on Africa, what that does is it takes you to an alphabetical list of all of the countries in Africa with, as you can see, a shapefile column, which is perfect. When you click that, what you'll get is everything from the most recent extract. You can also do historic at this site, unzipped. And can you sort of see right there is a selected building? So just in case you haven't seen the OpenStreetMap data before, this is for every country in the world. Now it's grassroots. It doesn't have the same level of authority as potentially a government created file, but look at the building footprints that we can download everywhere. And so we found it. Sure enough, you can see that the shapefile exports also have the feature class, as some have the name, but it was very generous with the type column so that we can query and filter for building footprints for basically anywhere around the world. I want to see hotels, restaurants, hospitals. Phenomenal. I really like that site. Next clue is taking us, the clue in the hospital is taking us to Peru. So what we need to do now is we need to locate the location in Peru with the lowest CO2 emission concentrations. We're going to use the aiddata.org, their GeoQuery site. This is another really phenomenal international data. And at the aid data site, if you can, it's quite small, but if you can trust me, it says Peru. I selected Peru, and we can see that there are two administrative boundaries. One that's going to be more on a province level, and these are getting smaller, the administrative level 2, and you can see all of the polygons that we can download geospatial data. And then when we go and select the data at the aid data site, there is just tons of data in here. And this is only right now, I'm in Peru on those small geographies. You can see I have the CO2 concentration selected. I've selected the mean CO2 emissions. I want the 2020 data. And then you just click that little add request. And sure enough, you get an email with the shapefile. Again, I pulled that right into ArcGIS Pro, and the administrative boundary with the highest CO2 emissions is right there, and we can get in a little bit closer, and we found it. So right there, but that's at that AData GeoQuery site. Really, really a phenomenal site. That clue is leading us to Vietnam, and we want to find the area with the highest average temperature in August specifically. This is the World Climb site. This is also free. Only the last site that I'll pull up is a proprietary ArcGIS site. This is at worldclimb.org. At one point, it was managed by Berkeley University, but I think it's split off onto their own now. And so we can see for the historic data from 1970 to 2000, they have temperature, precipitation, solar radiation, wind speed, water vapor, good amount of bioclimatic variables, as well as elevation. Everything that you download from here comes in 12 TIFF files. These are raster images, one for each month. So if you needed a specific month like I needed here, I'm going ahead and I'm bringing in the August average temperature data. It is worldwide. Then you can see I've clipped it here for Vietnam. And we are looking for the temperature data that is the lowest. And the particular raster cell was way down here in southern Vietnam. And if we get in closer and closer, this is raster data. So this is, and it's at a 30 arc second resolution. And so that's the cell size that we're seeing there. And that is the spot with the lowest average temperature in August of World Climb data. Last clue is leading us in Israel. We want to find the area, as small neighborhood as possible, that has the highest spending on electronics. This is the, you need an ArcGIS license to use Business Analyst Online, but holy cow, if you're looking for international, pretty micro data, hoping for the equivalent as close as we can get to zip code level or census tract analysis like we can very easily do in the US, if you're at a campus with an ArcGIS license, Business Analyst Online is phenomenal. By default, it's going to start with only US data, but you can see here, if you click on, oh, I didn't mean for that. If you were to click on this drop down here, it gives you a list of all countries, and you just specify which one you want to work with their data. So I went ahead and selected Israel, and there is just so much data. So I am in the spending category, just the spending category, let alone demographics, health, business. It is incredible. Worldwide, very small geography. So I selected the 2022 consumer electronics and photo IT equipment expenditure per capita. And what it did is it broke it down for me by local council. So these are the local council polygons, and this is still in the online interface. There are 238 local councils. And so we want to find which one, I don't remember, we want to find which one has the highest. Once you are using the same account, you can very easily, if you're familiar with ArcGIS Pro, I can pull in from my business analyst project data. And there is the file that I actually just did this morning and pulled that in. And within ArcGIS Pro, we found it that the area that spends the most on electronics and IT per capita is local council district 0587 Savion. So I hope I fit that all within 10 minutes, but this is a review of the sources, right? So natural earth, that really is ideal for entire world, regions or country level data. Wouldn't use that for micro analysis. GeoFabric's OpenStreetMap shapefiles is the opposite, right? It's really designed for local data, buildings, land use, places, points of interest, roads, railway lines, even has traffic counts. So it'll give you at the major intersection what traffic counts are internationally, and water data, of course. The A data is going to be really focusing more on country level. World Climb will be a little bit more macro for the entire world, regions or country level data, and ArcGIS Business Analyst Online. For international researchers, I can't say enough good things about ArcGIS Business Analysts Online, even if researchers don't want a map, if someone is looking for data in any Asian, African, Latin American country, we could go to Business Analysts Online and download it right to Excel if they just want that. And so that is, I'm going to stop sharing, and that's what I had in mind. Thank you, Cynthia, for adding the links. I'm seeing it now. I appreciate it.
Well,
All right. Oh,
I have a question. So I thought the way that you presented that was really brilliant. I've taken numerous GIS classes. I've never seen those data presented in quite the same way. I'm wondering, have you used a sort of similar method for maybe creating a lab or doing a quiz or something in like a classroom environment?
I usually do. I try and anytime I'm doing whether I'm a guest speaker or I'm teaching a class as the instructor of record, I always try and make every lesson or every exercise something fun and engaging. I always have fun doing researching with data, and I'm always wanting to make it as contagious as possible, especially with students who maybe have other things on their minds. But yes, this is the sort of approach that I always like to take with trying to make it as edutational as possible. I think that's a word. All right. All right. Well, if there are no questions, I'm going to give the microphone to Kristina Claunch.
Okay. All right. So let me share my screen here. And so I won't give names, but I do want to say I appreciate some advice I got from one of our members and then some major help I got from another. It was extremely informative and helped me to do this. So I appreciate that. So what I'm going to show you guys, I've worked with geography a little bit, but we started a game collection at our university library, and it's over 260 games right now. And we're still buying and doing all this stuff. And so I'm in charge of that now, just by default, because I was probably one of the more interested. Since I enjoy games, I like showing people how to play and that kind of thing. So I wanted to do a map that is going to show a little bit of our game collection, not all 260 something, but just a few of the games that span across the globe and the different countries that they actually are either originating from. And we'll see that here, where they either originate from or where they have a theme connected to the country. Because you'll find that there is really two versions. And so one of the versions would be that it's definitely originating in a certain country, which maybe you didn't realize it was from that one. And it could be thousands of years ago. Or it could be that it's simply themed with that country in mind or a region. And I wanted to include both because sometimes that's how we can still connect. And the whole point is that we're hoping to, and some of this I'll talk about again later, is that we're just hoping to maybe connect with some of our students and help them feel welcome in another way, aside from the many others that we try to do. So that's what we're going to do here. And I only looked at the international students for the fall of 23, this fall, because that's what I could find the data on. It was a little bit tricky, but we found it all. So as we go down, this map was one I had getting help making. And the smaller diamonds are the students where they are located in the countries. I don't have specific, obviously specific cities or anything like that for any of the information. But the country is just the relative general area. The orange dots will be the origin for certain games where they actually originate in that country. And then the triangle, the blue triangle, is going to be where they have a theme for the country or region, but they don't necessarily originate from there. And some of the sometimes it was because the author originated from that area, and that was the best I could cut close to. It's hard to find sometimes to define how you're going to measure that otherwise. So that's what I chose. So first, we actually have a larger population from Turkey. And so there are 31 students from there. And I will preface that there was about 155 that it did not specify where they were from, so I couldn't include them. But we have 31 from Turkey, and then the next higher number was Nigeria with 27. But we don't actually have, as you can see from these two smaller maps on the left, we don't actually have any games or connection with those two countries, which is like, oh, so that's something to work on. But there's ones that are in surrounding areas, and as I go down, the next one is India with 23 students, and then we have Nepal and Sri Lanka. But India, some of the games that we find there, especially the one that I reference here, that I'm about to reference, is one that is mentioned for Nigeria, but it just didn't originate there, but it does connect with them. And that one is Pachisi, which is what it's called in India, and we know it as Parcheesi here. So this is kind of an image of that original game. And it was far back as the 4th century AD. And so that kind of shows us some of that area. But then if we were looking at some of the other types of games and we scroll this little thing here, we can see that that's the one was Pachisi. And then if we come back over, it's letting us look at the themed ones. And one of the themes was Nagaraja for India. And then another one that was for Nepal was the Trek 12 Himalaya. So you can see that, and you can play with this whenever I put that link in, which I'm going to do at the end because I don't want people playing with it yet. I want to show it off. All right. So the next one that was highest in the list that I decided to look at was Canada. We have 9 students from there, and that at least identified from there. And one of the games that's very well popular is Crokinole. However, Crokinole isn't known here at all, but it is more known in the northern states for the United States, and there is actually even entire tournaments done with Crokinole. So I'm believing that some of our students are going to be familiar with that game, but it definitely has more of that physical attribute that you have to play it with, and it goes across that area. So it originated there. I don't show every single country that we have a connection to because that would be way too long, even for this presentation with the small amount that we did choose. But the next one that I did talk about is Korea, because the game Yutenori is a traditional Korean game that's usually played in the Korean New Year. It dates back to 57 BCE, and it was actually specifically requested by a staff member who was from Korea. And so I love it when we have one of those specific requests for a game they used to play in childhood or whatever, and can connect them to here. So that definitely helped her to feel like a little piece of home as well, which is always wonderful. So that one is there. This is one we all know. It's Clue, and it's actually originated as Cluedo. So this first side, we can see the Cluedo game. And it was in the UK is what they say, but he was in England. And it was during World War II with the bombing. So Anthony Pratt, he said he was stuck in his home because they couldn't go anywhere during the bombing. And he was thinking about all the different parties and the fun mystery games that they were doing and the mystery stories that they loved, especially Agatha Christie. And that's what helped him to start thinking of this idea for Clue. For Cluedo, which we know in the States as Clue. And this is one of the somewhat more recent. This is really one of the older versions. The yellow tiles in both would have been a little more faded for a regular board. But when you're trying to find a picture, that's what you do. So, so this kind of just shows that area. And for each of these, whenever you're on the map, you'll be able to kind of hover over the piece on the original map to see it. So Italy was another one. We only have 2 students from there at this time, but this is one of the games I love. And I actually found out about it on another, like a Nancy Drew mystery game that you can play on the computer, but they had this game built in called Scopa. And I love Scopa. It's really, really fun, really easy to play and to learn and play. And it was in Italy. It didn't give me a lot of detail on the timing, but it was a lot of fun. So anyway, okay, so I'll keep going. Next, we have the Congo, Democratic Republic of the Congo. There was another name that they had when I looked it up. There were several names on some of these when I looked them up to try to get the correct thing. And there, one of them was Congo Kinshasa, and there was another one I didn't write on here. But the Bumantu game is themed with the Bakongo culture, which actually is Central Africa, and it spans from the Congo to Angola. So it goes across, but I decided to put it in Congo since we actually had a student from there, and I was like, okay, that's going to work. But it's a game that we now have. I haven't gotten to play this one, but I do want to, pretty much with all of them. So another one, which everybody knows, Germany. Germany is the second country in the top 100 for designing popular board games. It is number 2 in that, according to the Board Game Geek, which is a very popular website for gamers to look at, and where we get a lot of data. So that's what I decided to include. One of the well-known games is Catan, and their Settlers of Catan is also what it's known as. There are many iterations of this that have come out, but I just want to do the main one. And we actually only have one student from Germany right now, but I still felt like it was, it's one of the biggest things for games. So you kind of had to look at both. Many of the games that you will see on here that are themed, which I'm not going over many of those because I like a lot of the origin ones. But you can see one here in Netherlands and stuff. The themed ones are often having been built actually origin in Germany, but their theme is for something. And so I've included them as themed for that reason. But so many do come from Germany, from the US, and from a few other places that are high on the list. So as the #1 country, and as the one that has the most students, which is 21,080, because obviously we're going to, for the United States, we are the #1 country for producing popular games, according to, again, Board Game Geek, to the one that I found the stats for. Not all the games created in the US are on this map. There are some that are probably very popular that you wish I'd included, but couldn't do because it's too many. We have a lot, but I wanted to include a few. So one of them was Scrabble, and that one was invented by Alfred Butts in New York in 1938, and it was during the Great Depression, which I thought it was so inventive, and it was a way to try to just combat distract them from the difficulty of the economic times, which I thought was very fascinating history. Skip-Bo was another one, and I included that because it was in Texas. So Minnie Hazel made it in 1967 here in Texas, so I was like, we have to include that one. TAC is one that was actually a fantasy game. It was never real, and it was described in the King Killer Chronicles, and then they later created it, which I thought was a very interesting background for some of these things. And then last, we have Ticket to Ride. Many of us know Ticket to Ride. It does have an origin with US, but there are so many Ticket to Rides with different themes for other countries and regions. And we've actually tried to buy all of those because of those themes, and because they can maybe be another factor to connect with the students in a geographic location, a different way of looking at it. So we tried to include those as well. Although not all of them are on here, and not even all the ones that we have are on this map, you are able to just kind of drag around and see what is available in different places. I obviously did not talk about all of these, but you can see which ones are here where we have students. The students are included, and how we are trying to develop this area. It definitely helps me to see what we have and what we don't have. And the more that I can include, the clearer picture I will have for myself on where to develop further. So that is all. I'm going to stop share unless somebody has a question with what I'm sharing. Okay. Oh, I am wearing game-related earrings. These are little Ace of Spades cards. I felt it was appropriate.
Kristina, there was a question in the chat, and I think others also would like to know, is this publicly available? And if so, would you share the URL with us?
Yes. So I was waiting till I finished because I was like, I can't think about people looking at it while I'm looking at it. But let me grab that and I will share the link with you guys. It is publicly available. That should work. Let me know if it doesn't work. Yeah, she definitely need to come and play games at SHSU. We'll be good for that. We can set up a whole room and everything.
Any other questions or comments for Kristina?
The last thing that I will attach will be, I'll put in a link for the guide that we have, and that will give you a more, not a complete, but a more complete view of the collection that we have. It does not include the game locations. That's something that I want to add in, but it does give you more of an idea of just what we have out there and some of the details about each game. And then you can go from there. And it's constantly being added to because there's always more games being purchased and processed, and they take a while to put the pages up. So there's a lot more that haven't gone up yet that I'm working on. Probably like 20 or 30.
Well, next up, we have Nathanial Dede-Bamfo. Was I close, Nathanial? I apologize if I butchered.
You got it
From
right.
Texas State University.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me share my screen. All right. Hello, everyone. So I'm going to share something about using drones for mapping and other cool stuff. So we kind of became more interested in these starting right around 2021. And, we're getting ready, but due to some projects that we're engaging, we couldn't actually do it until this past spring. So this past spring, most of the things I'm going to share with you came from then. So let me just go ahead and all right, so I'll give a brief background about drones, which also referred to as UAS. What are some of the benefits and some usages we have put drones to? So SUAS, Small Unmanned Aircraft System, that's the official name given to drones. Okay, but in academia, we don't like to use drones because of the bad connotations that they have, because they are mostly used in the military as well. So we prefer to use UAS. All right. So basically, it's called unmanned because, of course, there's no person on board, but it's operated from a remote location. And then also, the fact that the equipment, it says that the equipment necessary for the safe and efficient operation of the aircraft. So it comes with a remote controller, and then of course it has to be connected to some sort of satellite system, especially the bigger ones, for it to navigate properly and then also to record locations properly. Okay. So what are some of the benefits for research? Of course, they are cheaper compared to, renting an aircraft or a helicopter to go out and collect. So drones are relatively, comparatively cheaper, and then also cheaper to maintain, easily accessible and deployable. You don't need a lot of training, as in the case of like a pilot. So with this, with little training, you can deploy it. Better precision in terms of data capture, flexibility, and then the fact that you can maneuver around quite well with them. And the temporal resolution, we are talking about a time period when you capture like images from the same spot. So depending on you, you can return to that same location within hours or even minutes. So if you capture a specific location and you don't like it, you can return. Unlike most aircraft and satellite systems, they have a longer temporal resolution. Better spatial resolution, we are talking about what each pixel represents in real life. So with drones, you can capture a high resolution. So in that case, a smaller area is represented by each pixel, and then lower risk while traversing. So there are a lot of places where we cannot go as researchers, but with drones, we can just sit, relax, and then let it fly, capture over there. So these are some of the benefits. And with that, let's explore some of the equipment. So one of the most popular drones out there is what we call the DJI Phantom. So in this project, we use a DJI Phantom 4. So this, what we have in our fleet looks just like that. And then alongside, we used common, smartphones, and I will explain what we use the smartphones for. And when it comes to software processing, the data that you collect, we use different forms. So ArcGIS Pro for our mapping, but for photogrammetry, we use a software called Pix4D Mapper, and its equivalent in ArcGIS suite of software is what we call ArcGIS Drone to Map. But on your smartphone, you can use a free app called Pix4D Catch. So Pix4D Catch, it's point and shoot, it collects, and then it can turn all your images into a 3D model. So that's something that anyone can do. So what can you use your drones for? Videography. So here at Texas State, we wanted to do a promotion for our library, and this is the Alcock Library, and basically we just flew the drone one Saturday morning when the sun was rising, and basically captured everything. Trust me, I'm not going to play everything, but I know you like it, but just to keep within time. Yeah, so we caught the sunrise and things like that. Okay. Aerial imagery and terrain modeling. You can also use drones for these things. So we started a project where we wanted to model or create a 2D map for all the parks in San Marcos. So this is what we call the 5 Mile Dam. I'm not sure if any of you knows where it is. It's actually closer to where I live. So 5 Mile Dam area, the Blanco River runs right by it, and it's got some really nice soccer pitches. So we went in there. This is the entire map of it, but just to show you the level of detail. So we parked right there. And if you zoom in closely with a drone, you can get such high spatial resolution. So this will be very suitable if you want to turn this into a 3D model of the parks and then map very detailed aspect of the parks. You can use a drone for that. Okay, same with another park, the Ramon Lucio Parks in San Marcos. Just to give you a sense of the detail, yeah, this is the San Marcos Welcome Center right in that corner. Okay, what about campus? So this was done in the summer. This is the entire San Marcos Texas State campus. So due to some, problems that we encountered, there were days that it rained and then there were some software issues. We had to go back and update the drones and all that. So the whole project lasted for about a little over 3 weeks. And we were able to piece them together and capture this. The last time we mapped the entire campus, like obtain an aerial image of campus, was around 2015. So this was done cheaply. The previous one, we paid about 3,000, but this time we just flew over campus, captured it, and then modeled it. It cost us our time and then our effort, but it was pretty nice experience. So this is the aerial image of campus at a resolution of 3.5 centimeters. That's the spatial resolution. All right, and then we turned that the drone imagery using the photogrammetry software. You are able to produce point clouds, which works just like LiDAR, and it all depends on how much overlap you have in the images. So with the point cloud, we're able to produce what we call a DSM, a digital surface model. So the DSM will account for the height of all features that protrude from the terrain. So this is a DSM representing Texas State University. That's the stadium, and Alkirk Library is right there. That's where the library is. Okay, how about 3D modeling and digital twin? So that's our digital twin is our next target. We've started, but we haven't completed yet. So we created some 3D models. If you come to campus, you will see these, the stallions, the fighting stallions, the bobcat statue, and then LBJ statue. Okay, I see Josh shaking the head, nodding, because he was here a few weeks ago. So I'm going to show you this pretty quick. Let me go back over here. So the 3D model, this is the stallions. So we flew the drone over it. And actually, we use a very tiny drone, DJI Mini 2. And based on the images, we turned it into a 3D model. And just to show you, from this 3D model, I went to our makerspace and then I printed it. Unfortunately, I broke the leg. So this is the base. And then those are the stallions. So you can do something like that out of it. All right. I've got a few more, but for the sake of time, I'm just going to continue. All right. So our ultimate goal is to create a digital twin. So we've begun, we use LiDAR data to provide the base, but we have now started digitizing the buildings and all that using city engines, and ultimately we'll go out there, capture some images for sites of the building, and then drape it over them, so it will create a more a 3D realistic view of campus. And basically, it did not, the only thing it costs is time and effort, but quite cheaply. If this were to be done using other alternative means, it's going to cost a lot more. So just to share with you some basic things that you could do using drones right on campus. We have in our fleet 4 different drones, and we check them out a maximum of 3 days, but it can be renewed. So we've been doing this for some time now, and I want to give shout out to my student employees, Matt Dove, Aaron Thomas, and then my colleagues, Harley, and then Noah. So with that, I'm going to stop here. If anyone has a question for me, I'll be glad to answer.
Will you tell us again how many drones you have at the library?
We have 4. So we have 2 DJI Minis, And then we have two phantoms. So one is the multispectral for doing multispectral analysis. And then the other one is just a regular phantom for capturing videos. And then you can also use it for drone mapping as well.
And do you check those out to anybody or just faculty or just people on campus or?
As long as you're part of Texas State, you can check it out. So
Okay.
students, faculty, staff.
Thanks.
Sure.
Nathaniel, is there any training that you require of folks before they can check it out?
For the basic ones like DJI minis, they are tiny. So all that we require will be, okay, you've got your ID, and if you want to protect yourself, you get a drone insurance, but it doesn't take too much. So we've got some training videos that we ask some of the students to watch, and sometimes give them some basic intro, but usually once they check it out, they just it takes no time to figure some of the basics. But the bigger drones like the Phantoms, of course, we require that you have a drone license. So the drone pilot license 107C, and or you know somebody who has that license. Fortunately, my student employees were trained to go get their license. So if you don't have a license, you can contract them and they can assist you. Does that answer your question, Josh? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other question? Okay. I'll stop sharing my screen then.
Well, as usual, we save the best for last. We have the man himself, Michael Shensky from UT Austin.
Hi, everyone. I don't know about that. These have been some really interesting presentations. This is going to be tough here to top any of those. So I'll do my best, though. Let's go ahead and get ready to share my screen. All right, can everybody see? Fantastic. All right, so I'm going to be talking today about a project that's been underway now for a few years, going all the way back to before the pandemic, but it's really seen some notable success this year, and finally we've been able to realize the vision that we had at the outset back in 2019. And so really excited to talk to you today about the success that we've had recently automating the georeferencing of Sanborn fire insurance map from our Pre-GIS Library map collection. All right, so project background, you've probably heard me talk about these things at various points over the last few years at different GIS interest group meetings, but here at the UT Libraries, we are very fortunate to have a collection of over 60,000 scan map images that have been scanned from the physical sheets in our Pre-GIS Library map collection over decades, going all the way back to the 90s. And so we've got this great collection. These scan map images have been shared through our PCL map site that has been very, very popular over the years. And one of the challenges that we faced in recent years is trying to georeference all these and develop metadata for them so that we can make them more discoverable through our new interface, the Texas Geodata Portal that launched back in 2019. The challenge here is that we have tens of thousands of maps to georeference, and if we're trying to georeference a map and develop metadata for it, it might take about 15 minutes per map. And if we do the math here, 15 minutes per map times 60,000 maps, it would take somebody working 40-hour weeks, 8 years to complete all of this work. So I've been at the UT Libraries for 5.5 years now. If I had started my first day on the job, I still wouldn't be done with this task if I had spent every minute georeferencing maps. So that's our challenge, right? Is how can we utilize an automated workflow to cut down on the time required to georeference these maps? So originally, when we had the vision for this project, we wanted to create an annotation interface that would make it really easy for folks to highlight important information on these scan map images that we might use to develop metadata and georeference the maps. So our first task was to create an annotation interface, and originally we had this vision that we could then crowdsource annotation of the maps. That plan didn't work out. We couldn't get approval here at UT Austin to pursue that crowdsourcing approach. But as I'll highlight in a little bit, that didn't actually end up even being necessary. We were able to successfully generate enough annotations in-house to develop this automated georeferencing workflow. So originally this project team consisted of the UT libraries. We had a faculty member from our UT School of Information, and we had some folks from the city of Austin who contributed some maps that we were going to test this automated georeferencing workflow on. So our goal was to develop this, at least initially, develop this annotation interface that'd be customizable, where we could build in instructions so that we could train others to use it without too much effort. We wanted to support multiple annotation types. So in some cases, we would be adding point annotations. In other cases, we'd be adding polygons. We wanted it to be really easy to use and quick and responsive and customizable so that it could support a wide variety of map types. We had two students who were paid through the project that we called the ML4GIS project. We received funding from one of our Grand Challenge initiatives here on campus, the Good System initiatives at UT Austin. And we were able to use that funding to pay these students to build out this annotation tool under the guidance of the faculty member in the School of Information who had expertise in this area. This is an overview of the workflow that we were hoping to develop, where we would have folks annotate our maps and identify things like street intersections in the Sanborn maps that we thought we could then use that annotation information to successfully georeference maps by matching the image coordinates with the intersections to the geospatial coordinates with the intersections based on the street name information. We were going to process those annotations to get them into a standardized format, use them for georeferencing and also metadata development. So this allowed us to learn what street labels were found on each map. And then we were going to add those georeference maps to our Texas Geodata portal. So this is a demonstration of what we were starting with in the annotation phase. So on the left, you see that I've highlighted an intersection here. This is the intersection of 2nd and Liberty Street. I forget exactly what city this was from, unfortunately. But then on the right, you see we have geospatial data. This is census tiger line data for streets in Texas. And the intersection points actually had to be derived from the census tiger line data. The census doesn't have intersection points, and so I had to write a script that would create that point shapefile, which was going to be integral for matching the geospatial coordinates that we see depicted on the right with the image coordinates, basically what pixel this intersection is found on here on the left. All right, so over the course of about a year, we had staff members and student employee here at the UT Libraries work on creating annotations for 200 Sanborn maps. These annotations could be exported with the new annotation tool into JSON format, a custom JSON schema that we had come up with. And as we discovered earlier this year, that annotation format didn't exactly work. We needed to write another script to convert it into a standard format that's more widely used for developing machine learning object detection models. But that effort was fairly trivial. So that was the next step in the process, was converting into that standardized annotation format. So we really focused on two different collections at first. I'm highlighting just one of them today because this is the only one that we've actually gotten to the point where maps are being successfully georeferenced with this automated workflow. But we focused on our Army Map Service maps, which are a big component of our collection. We have thousands and thousands of those here in the UT libraries that have already been scanned. We also have 14,095 Sanborn fire insurance maps in our collection. So this is a really big component of our PCL map collection. These are extremely interesting, really detailed fire insurance maps of cities across Texas that were developed in the late 1800s and early 1900s. And it's building level detail. You can just see these really intricate details that tell you a lot about what was happening in these cities in these particular time periods for which these maps were produced. So really, really useful to folks that are doing historical research on events here in Texas. All right, so that's what we decided to focus on because we thought this would be, really valuable to get these maps into our Texas Geodata portal, and we thought we could successfully use the intersection annotation to automate the georeferencing of these maps. So last year, I was contacted by a capstone student in our School of Information, Hannah Doobie, who also happened to be a staff member in the UT Libraries. She was interested in working on this project with me, and so she completed her capstone project in the spring of this year. And she had been trained in how to develop machine learning models, which was a skill that I didn't have. And so she was really integral to this next step of creating a Python script in a Colab notebook that we see here on the left that used TensorFlow to train an object detection model based on the intersection data that we had already produced. So we had 200 Sanborn maps that we had annotated with, I think, an average of about 6 intersections per map. So we had, several thousand intersection points to train the model on. And we found that we were able to train it successfully. So it was able to then automatically detect the intersections in Sanborn maps that we had never processed ourselves, which was really amazing to see. So that happened in April of this year and was kind of unexpected. It was much more successful than we ever even imagined it could be. So this is what that model produces. You see it's showing coordinates here, image coordinates that reflect where it has predicted that intersections exist on a particular map. So it's one of these maps of small towns in Texas. And what I did is I took that information and converted it into from bounding boxes for where the general area of the intersection is to a centroid for that intersection. So we just have a single intersection point identified on the map. And this is a visualization that I created with a separate script that shows what the model was basically doing. So every time we see one of these little X's, or actually it's the purple box that the model was initially creating, and then I wrote a script that then calculated the centroid from that, and that's where we see these red X's placed. And you can see it's not exactly perfect. There are cases where here, for instance, it's missing an intersection, but overall, it's probably 90% effective at identifying intersections on these Sanborn maps. And so again, we have 14,000 maps. You could plug all 14,000 into here, and you'd get pretty good results. So that was really cool to see. So the next step was then creating the intersection point data that we needed to compare our image coordinate information for the intersections to, so we could associate geographic coordinates with the image coordinates on the Sanborn map. One of the challenges here is that Texas is a massive state, and there are an enormous number of street segments. If we look at all the street segments for the entire state of Texas, it's just too big. And the Sanborn maps are not for very rural areas. They're only for urban areas or towns and cities. And so what I did is I clipped the road network for the state of Texas that, again, was downloaded from the Census Tigerline site to only the city boundaries in the state of Texas. And you can see an example of that on the bottom right, a small town in Texas. And those are just the roads in that area, and everything outside of that city boundary. I did a little buffer around it to make sure I got everything that was important. Everything outside of that buffer around the city boundary was cut out. And then the next step was writing a separate script to calculate the intersections of each of those streets. So this is kind of an unwieldy process. Currently, it only works for the small towns in Texas because it's not a very efficient algorithm that it uses to do the matching. It looks at every single intersection in the data set, or every street segment in the data set, to see if it intersects with any other segment. And so it's doing a lot of kind of pointless matching and attempted matching in order to find a successful match. And so if I were to run this on the city of Houston, for instance, it would probably take days and days to complete. So right now it's only doing the smallest, like 20 cities in Texas, while I was trying to figure out if this would be viable or not. And then you can see over here on the right, it's this screenshot we saw earlier. We see the intersection data that's been calculated there from the Tigerline street line data. And then we run the main script here, our ML4GIS Python script. Over on the right, we see the different input and output folders that are created by this script. The inputs that pulls in, and then it generates the output folders. I'll walk you through some of these outputs here. So the first thing it does is it looks at all the intersection points for each map. It then uses the intersection point to determine where the street labels are likely to be found in the map. And then it crops out that section of the map image. And so we can see here, these are just snapshots of some of the street cropped images that it's generated. And then the next step is to OCR these smaller cropped images in order to pick out the street information that should be associated with that intersection. So you can see we have a lot of 5th Street, 6th Street. This process isn't always perfect. You can see in this example down here in the bottom right, Cedar Street is kind of cut in half because it was a little bit off in predicting where that intersection point should go. But overall, we see that most of these are legible. So it crops both the vertical streets and horizontal streets. If the streets run at a diagonal through the map, it doesn't work. So it's definitely not a perfect approach. There's room for improvement, but we were really amazed that by the end of this testing process, we were able to successfully georeference some maps. So you can see here a map of Bartlett, Texas, and a map of Goliad, Texas, both nearly perfectly georeferenced. I mean, these are essentially equivalent to the results we would get if we manually georeference these maps in QGIS, and we've never manually georeferenced these maps. It's only been done by the computer using this automated process. So this was amazing. I mean, we had this vision that this would be possible, but I always kind of doubted that we could actually do it. And then it was working in May of this year. So this was a huge surprise, but not everything turned out perfectly. So again, we were only running this for the small towns in Texas, the 20 smallest towns, because it took a couple hours to generate the intersection points for those, and anything larger than that would have taken days to run. But some of the maps didn't turn out quite so good. So we can see that part of the map in some cases would be georeferenced perfectly accurately, but then another section of it would be very distorted. But these are not too bad. At least part of the map is accurate. Things started to get worse in some cases. So these ones had some major issues. Obviously, we wouldn't consider putting these up in the Texas GeoData portal. After we investigated why we were obtaining these results, we were able to discover why the algorithm was doing this in certain cases. But obviously, there needs to be some improvement here. And we ended up with some really strange situations where things were not even recognizable as maps after they had gone through the automated pipeline. So some success, as a proof of concept, we demonstrated that it's possible. And this shows a summary of the results that we were able to get. So in terms of maps that had at least 3 georeferenced or geo-identified points on them, 68 out of 164 maps that we tried to process were technically georeferenceable. And we can see that of the 164 maps we tried to process, 22 maps came out with what we would consider sufficiently accurate results to add to the Texas GeoData portal. But many of the maps that were processed were not completely successfully georeferenced. So there's a lot of room for improvement, but I'd say it's still early days. A lot of work still to be done. We want to improve the intersection detection rate. Already it's pretty good at about 90%, but we can make it even better. Improve the OCR success rate for the street labels. There's not 100% success rate there. Definitely some things I think we can do to make the results better. We need to improve the automated process for creating the street intersection points because it's really, really slow. I'm sure there's a way that we can optimize it so that we can run the Sanborn maps for the larger cities through this automated pipeline as well. I would really like to try to run this against all 14,000 Sanborn maps. It would be interesting to see exactly how many we can georeference. I estimate that we'll probably be able to successfully georeference a couple thousand of them using this approach, and have it run in the span of a couple hours. Just pretty amazing, where that would take hours and really days or months of personnel time to manually georeference those. And then what we've already started to do is explore how we could use a similar approach to georeference the maps in our Army Map Service and USGS topographic map collections. Everything that we've seen indicates that those maps might even be easier to georeference than the Sanborn maps. Just will take us a little bit of time to adjust our script to account for the differences in how we're extracting the geospatial information from those maps, which will be in the form of coordinates that are located at the corners of the map on the map sheet. So really exciting. I think this has the potential to result in thousands of maps being georeferenced in relatively short order. And big thanks to everybody that's been involved in this project over the years. We see the original project team over there on the left, and then Hannah Doobie called out there in the orange box, because none of this would have been possible without her machine learning expertise that she brought to bear on this project this past spring. And yeah, if there's any questions, we'd be glad to answer them.
I do have a question, but I'm just going to preface this first in case anyone is thinking or wondering, we are not going to do the trivia contest today. So if anybody was concerned how long you could stay, we are basically ending at this point, except for questions. I do have a question, Michael. I've got a bunch, but the one that's most on my mind, how many maps did you have to annotate for the training?
Mhm.
And I don't quite have a sense for what was actually involved with the annotating. Like, are you drawing on a map? Are you entering, right? So I'd like to know how many maps and what the annotation involved.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll show you, this is the annotation tool running right now locally on my computer. So here are the annotation tools. I'll add a new point here. I'll identify this as a street intersection. I'll put in the street name. This is 2nd and Liberty Street. And then over here we have, looks like Laurel Avenue and 2nd. And so, I mean, it's a pretty quick process for adding each of these points. We processed 200 Sanborn maps. Not all of them had identifiable intersections on them. Some of them were just kind of odd ones that didn't have intersections we could identify. But that number of annotations, so again, about maybe 6 intersections on average per map, 200 maps that we processed, so maybe 1,200 intersection points total, resulted in a model that could detect intersections with approximately a 90% success rate. So how many could we have gotten away with? Could it have trained the model with just 100 or just 50 maps worth of intersection points? I don't know. And that's one of the interesting questions that I'd like to address as well, is what is the minimum we could get away with in order to train models in the future? Is it just kind of overkill to do what we already did? I didn't think it was going to be sufficient, the 200 maps that we had processed, and being relatively new to this workflow and type of work. So it's really interesting to see that, yeah, it was enough. And the overall process wasn't too painful. As you can see here, it's pretty quick to create those annotations.
Thanks, Michael. That was great.
Showing here that those annotations that I created can be downloaded in a JSON file just by clicking the download button. There's the data. There. Any other questions? So yeah, hopefully we can get this process improved and make it even more accurate, and it would be a great thing that we could share with others too, I think, so that if they have Sanborn maps for other states, for instance, they'd be able to use the same process to georeference their maps as well.
Excellent. Well, we have done, is this the 3rd pre-GIS day? I think it may be the 3rd pre-GIS day that we've celebrated through the TDL GIS interest group. Just phenomenal. Looking forward to you taking over next year, Alex. Oh, sorry. What the heck was I thinking? Looking forward to you taking next year, Cynthia, and joining us, Alex, and have a great Wednesday afternoon. And if you are celebrating actual GIS day next week, hopefully your GIS day goes well. And thanks, guys.
Bye, y'all. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for the great
Bye-bye.
presentations.
Definitely.
Yeah, thanks.